What is up, Mets fans? Welcome back to another episode of the Mets'd podcast. The boys are hot. They're ready to go. Didn't sweep the series, but hey, took 2 of 3 from the Rangers out in Dallas, Texas, or Fort Worth, technically. Fort Worth, Texas. Arlington actually might even be technically where they're playing. A lot of technicalities in Texas. Regardless, we won the series. All great stuff going on there. The Grimace Mets, the gay Mets, whatever you want to call them. They just keep winning. We're going to talk about everything that happened in the series, as well as just update you guys on what's going on around baseball. We lost Willie Mays. We'll talk about him as well. He passed away 2 days ago at the time that you guys are listening to this, one of the greatest players to ever play. And we have a Cubs preview with special guest Lance Brozdowski, who works for Marquee. He's an analyst over there. He does a lot of really great stuff over on YouTube as well on the pitching side. And we're going to talk prospects with him as well. So make sure you stick through the whole episode so that you can see that. If you guys do enjoy what you're listening to over here, make sure you follow us over on all our social media at Mets'd on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Go subscribe to the Mets'd Podcast YouTube channel if you want to see the video version of this. And if you're listening to us, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, drop us a rating, drop us a review, download it, and subscribe. Remember, if you want a shout out on the podcast, leave us a review. We'll read it out. We'll shout you out at the end of the episode. So, James, I've seen you a lot today. After we did the Lance interview, because technically we did the Lance interview before we did this, and then we got one beer watching the Euros, Scotland versus Switzerland, and now we're talking about the Mets at midnight. How you feeling?
I can't believe it's midnight. I'm almost upset you told me it was midnight. God, I took like such a hard accidental nap in the middle of the day. I got glutened. I got like late lunch with my family and I accidentally had some gluten, and I got home and I was just like, I couldn't keep the eyes open. Then work tonight, but buzzing off the Mets, buzzing a little bit less on Wednesday compared to Tuesday, just because Monday and Tuesday it felt like this team could literally do anything and there was an outside chance they were never going to lose again. But back down to earth a little bit, but still have like a nice uplifted feeling about the state of this team and the state of the season, really just fueled by improved lineup, decent pitching, and McDonald's mascot.
Yeah, no, it was a good heat check. I think the Mets needed a little bit of a heat check. That would have been 8 in a row, I believe they would have won if they won tonight. Unfortunately, they did blow it. Drew Smith came in, gave up a 2-run home run to Leody Taveras. We'll talk about that as we get into game 3. But let's start off with the good stuff. Game 1. Game 1 was awesome. That was genuinely one of the more fun Mets games we've watched this year. 14-2. We don't really do that too often. I know we've put up like a lot of runs on teams earlier in the year, but the way that this team did the 14 runs, it was almost euphoric at this point.
That was almost like stupid because it was John Gray was in, who's actually had a decent year. John Gray has had such a good year that he gave up 9 runs to the Mets in 3 innings, and his ERA is still 3.3. That's how good he was pitching this year. And it was just hit. I think the Mets had 8 singles in the first 2 innings. It just didn't stop. And then DJ Stewart home run, Nemo with a home run. Francisco Lindor had 4 hits by the time the 5th inning was underway. Brandon Nimmo had 3 as he gets really hot in the 2 holes. It was like stupid as it was going on. Like I honestly couldn't believe it. I couldn't even remember a time in my life that the Mets had a game like this. One of my cousins reminded me out of legitimately nowhere that the Mets had a game against the Cubs I have it here. I'm scrolling back. It was in 2012 where they had 16 hits and won 17-1. So still not even 20 hits. But I couldn't believe he even had that on deck. It reminded me of that. And craziest thing about this box score against the Mets, 17-1 against the Cubs, the Mets were 40-36 on June 27th, 2012. I don't remember the 2012 Mets ever even sniffing 500, let alone being over it halfway through the season.
I mean, I guess it's just the classic, like, I'm sure we had a West Coast trip right around July, maybe beginning of August, that tore that season down. But yeah, I mean, I guess we're going back 12 years now. Don't remember the 2012 season almost at all.
No, nothing about it. But again, just fun. This was fun as shit. This was coming off the sweep of the Padres. You were like, oh, things are actually happening. Like this hot streak is legitimately real.
Yes.
This Rangers team, I feel like gets a lot of shine because they won the World Series last year, as you probably should get shine for being defending champions. But they stink. This team is awful. There's no redeeming qualities of this team. The lineup that was unstoppable last year has like 3 good hitters in it right now. They have no pitching whatsoever. They still have no relievers. They won the World Series with no relievers, but this team has no relievers. Such a docile team right now. I don't think it has any chance to really make a run, even with our old friends DeGrom and Scherzer coming back.
Yeah, I didn't realize how bad it had actually gotten for the Rangers. Because again, you see Corey Seager, Adolis Garcia is having a bad year, but he'll turn around at some point. Marcus Semien, even like Nathaniel Lowe, you're like, oh, those are some good players. But then you look at the rest of this roster, you're like, oh, there's really not much else going on there besides Josh Smith, who Is he real good? I can't tell with him. He feels like a guy that I would want to call fake good, but more and more of those guys are popping up, I feel like, this year than ever.
He might be real good because like the Rangers do this thing where they just love to like get a guy who makes a lot of contact and get them some more power. So I just trust them the fact he's doing it, even though it's still not even that much power, but just puts the bat in the ball a ton. But again, there's nothing redeeming about this team, and the Mets just kind of sunned them. There's a really good chance they were going to sweep back-to-back series against two teams that going into the year you probably would have said they were playoff teams, but no, it's just amazing. And the story, it's hard. We haven't really segmented game by game in a while. It's kind of like just feels weird after this whole week in the series and all this Grimace shit. That's hard to like gather. But I don't know. Like I can't even think of a place to go right now.
I can think of a place to go. How about there was, I think, 5 different Mets with 3 or more hits in this game. 22 hits for the team. Lindor had 4, Nimmo had 3, Alonso had 3, Mark Vientos had 3, Francisco Alvarez had 3. Like, what? Can you remember a time the Mets had 5 hitters with 3 or more hits each? That in of itself is pretty incredible. And David Peterson, I got to say, did a really fine job. He got the lead early, kept the lead early, gave up a home run, I think, at one point to Robbie Grossman, because Robbie Grossman haunts the Mets. That guy always plays well against us, it seems like. But he did not waver. He gave us 6 strong innings, 6 strikeouts, 3 walks, 4 hits, 2 earned runs. And that's exactly what you have to do when the team gives you a 7-run lead in the second inning. It was nice to see that David Peterson didn't crumble, didn't let off the gas by any means, and just actually looked like a major league pitcher.
And was able to hang in there for 6 innings in a game where you didn't want to use any bullpen at all, able to not have to use much bullpen. Peterson did something cool in this game, something that I really, really liked, something that he used to do a lot more when he was at his best in 2022, and that was just a very heavy dose and a heavy diet of 4-seam fastballs and back foot sliders to right-handed hitters. And those fastballs being like fastballs that were crowding righties, kind of up and in. And David Peterson, again, we say it every single time, like we know what he is at this point. Like he's just a guy. Like maybe he can elevate himself to be a back end rotation guy, but he right now is just kind of fighting for his life as a major league starter. And for him, not really doing anything elite, not really having anything super great to hang his hat on. The fact that he was able to mix his sinker and his fastball, give hitters both of those looks, and then be able to drop those sliders and place them and get good bite on them every time. And it always comes back to this idea that maybe this just always probably is a mental thing for David Peterson.
Yeah,
and it's just the fact that the Mets spotted him a 7-0 lead for the bottom of the second inning. He could like just take a breath and relax a little bit. And we got that. He did give up the home run, but nice to just see him kind of ease through it. Also something funny in this game for the analytics haters crowd, the non-exit velocity people. Mark Vientos had the 2 hardest hit balls for the Mets in this game at 110, 109, and then it was a bunch of Rangers with the hardest hit balls in the game because the Mets were just an absolute singles machine. And yeah, it's just funny how that works out, but still just a great game. I even just looked on StatHead quickly while we did this. Can you guess the last time the Mets had 20 hits in a game?
2019.
Yes.
Ooh, 2019. Nice. Good guess.
Yeah. August 2019.
Who they play?
In Atlanta. In a 10-8 game. So the Mets had 20 hits and only won by 2.
That feels more like the Mets, not this 14-2 easy win from start to finish. Not used to it. Did you also, I want to get your opinion on the camera angle for the Rangers, because it is one of the most unique camera angles, and unique in all the wrong ways. It is so incredibly high, and it is also maybe the only camera angle that is literally exactly behind the pitcher, so you get no idea if pitches are dropping or sinking. You can't the automatic strike zone or the automated strike zone on the screen is completely screwed up, because then when they put it back down to field level, you're like, oh, that pitch was above the letters. I had no clue it was that high. It is one of the worst watching experiences ever. I can't believe for a new baseball stadium, that's how it's designed to be watched on TV.
I know. I'm happy you reminded me of this, because I was going to go off about it. I know a friend of the podcast, pitcher list, Nick Pollock, hates this camera angle. Yep. It's miserable. And you really can't see anything going on with the pitchers when you watch the game on this angle. And it sucks. Like, you wish that, like, if even with the road broadcast SNY, we could get something a little better than this. But I even there was a couple innings of this game where just the streamer I usually use has been sour recently. It's not been good, Stream West, but it's really taken a fall. So I did have to watch some innings here on the Rangers broadcast. It's so bland and boring.
Yeah,
on Wednesday's game, the missed balk call on Sean Manaea in the first inning, which was definitely a balk, and Gary,
yeah, definitely.
Keith and Gary talked about it and like gave him some shit for it. They talked about it for like 7 minutes.
7 minutes?
It's like there was no moving on whatsoever. It was painful. But yeah, it's just every single time I watch a broadcast that's not done by Gary, Keith, and Ron, I feel bad for other fans of baseball in a way I can't even really describe.
Yeah, I was even watching the Yankees today, and it's impressive how little
Oh,
It's impressive how little Michael Kay talks for a play-by-play analyst. It's out of
gotta hate it.
control.
No, I just gotta hate that job. But
Also, speaking of which, commentators talking. Did you catch Keith's comments during the game?
yeah, I didn't even want to bring it up because I felt bad, but I didn't want to talk about it. I
It
don't want
was
to bring
it,
time
it was
to it.
it was a tough look. It was a tough look. I think I understand what he meant, but it came out all the wrong ways.
Yeah, Keith, there was the Texas Rangers have cheerleaders, which is the Texas version of the Queen's Crew.
Which
Just blonde woman dancing on the dugout, and then Gary said something about Texas, big deal, cheerleaders, high school football is huge here, and Keith said which high school? And
he say what high school? I want to know what high school they're going to or whatever.
Something
and you're
that.
like, man, you're 70, dude. Relax.
And then Gary just moved on really quickly, which is pro by Gary. But yeah, I'm gonna have to move on from this. That was a creepy moment, but
good win. That's what we
great
remember
win.
from
Great
that
win
game.
on
That's
Monday.
what we remember. Great win. Nothing else. Good win. Game 2.
It just hits.
Talk about a great win. Game 2 was a unreal game, start to finish for the Mets. This was really, really good. They had that blow-up inning in the 5th inning where Severino just simply lost it. It seemed like the Rangers, third time through the lineup, knew everything that was coming, knew what pitches were coming. Severino, I think, only had 1 strikeout in this game, which is getting a little bit concerning now that he's just simply not striking almost anybody out anymore. But they really started to piece him up. And I will say, credit to Luis Severino, though. He was still able to go 6 1/3 despite having an inning where he gave up 5. And also, I guess, a little bit of credit to Carlos Mendoza, too, for giving him that leash, knowing that we need to get a few more outs, especially with the news that Dedniel Nunez couldn't pitch this series because he had a sinus infection. So we were down 1 guy in the bullpen because, of course, we are. We're always down a guy for some reason. But to come back like they did, I was texting my dad, and I was like, this sucks. I was really feeling good. I was feeling high. To get that 5 running in the 5th felt like a punch in the gut. I was like, but if they come back or if they even just fight a little bit here, it says a lot about this team. And not only did they fight, they came back and won this game. It was phenomenal.
Now, this was the quintessential premier win for the Mets this season. This was the one where it finally felt like things are real. This is the one where it finally felt like there's going to be a playoff game. I was on radio for this game because I was out and about, and I was so excited. I put a long video on our Instagram and on Twitter about just the fact how the Mets clawed back after going down big, that Severino winning. And it was just, you got a run in the 6th, a run in the 7th, 2 in the 8th, and 1 in the 9th, 4. And then the Mets even got 1 in the 5th before the Rangers had their big inning with the Josh Smith home run off Severino. So 5 straight innings, this team scored the run. And, and 4 of those 5 innings, it was exactly 1 run. So that's scratching, that's clawing, that's belief, that's desire. That's kind of the mentality and the dogness that we've kind of been screaming for this team, begging for them to show us for years now, and you just finally felt it the first time. And there was other small moments that happened in this game, but something that hyped me up, I know something that hyped you up a lot, that felt like things were different, were when there was a double play in 9th inning, and Edwin Diaz and Francisco Lindor looking at each other, just screaming at each other, screaming. And Katia Lindor, Ms. Lindor, she posted on Twitter this morning when the SNY put the highlight up. She was like, you see, this is why you need Puerto Ricans in baseball. This kind of heart and this kind of emotion. They're really good at playing it too. I was like, fuck yeah, that's a great comment. But that was just a moment. We're here, we're back, we're good, let's win.
Well, I feel like Lindor, particularly since moving to the leadoff spot, is playing with a little more pizzazz, a little more, I don't want to say passion because I don't think he ever wasn't playing with passion. I don't think he was ever not playing hard. But if he feels a little more emotional on the field now, and I think that's something that, I've mentioned with Edwin Diaz before, it seems like he's at his best when he puts his emotions into how he's playing. And it seems like for Francisco Lindor, it's kind of the same thing. I don't know what's going on, what the change has been. But when those guys are vibing like that, it's elite. And again, that comeback was huge. You mentioned that they were scrapping away. There was only 1 home run after the 5th inning, and it was Brandon Nimmo's in the 6th, which was a big home run. Love Brandon Nimmo. He's playing so well out of the 2-hole. But then you looked at Francisco Alvarez, another 3-hit game, 2nd in a row. Mark Vientos, another 3-hit game. Pete Alonso got that big hit to put the Mets ahead late with that double down the line. They finally stepped up. And I don't know if this is maybe hyperbole, but it feels like Francisco Alvarez being in the lineup just changes things for this team. You heard a lot of the pitchers talk about him. Minaya gave him a ton of credit after the game in Game 3, saying that after the first inning, Mendoza and Alvarez went up to him, basically kind of told him, you're good, figure it out, we're going to be all right. Here's the game plan, stick to it. Quintana, Severino, all these guys talked about pitching to Alvarez, how much they love throwing to him, how he makes you feel like you have the best stuff out there even when you're struggling. Like he's an incredible motivator, incredibly prepared. And I don't know what it is, but it seems like when this guy plays, the Mets are different.
They're so different. I mean, the game on Wednesday broke the trends, but going into the game on Wednesday, the Mets were 18-1 in Francisco Alvarez's last 19 games, which doesn't even make any fucking sense.
No.
Like new Twitter superstar Diana, she like likened Alvarez to ROG Anunoby on Twitter over the weekend.
Ooh.
Now a lot of people have stolen that joke and run with it, like across all forms of social media. But Diana had that tweet first. She had that comment first. And it is funny to think about that because like OG Anunoby came to the Knicks, they basically won every single game they had. He got hurt, but OG Anunoby was playing a vital role for the Knicks, and two, he was playing it really fucking well and hitting so many of the shots, moving the ball, being a secondary ball handler, and playing the best defense on the team. Where Alvarez, the things he's doing commanding his pitching staff are really real, and we have all those stats about how much lower the Mets team ERA is when he's behind the plate compared to other players, but that's kind of noisy. He's still caught fewer innings this year than I think both Omar Narvaez and Tomas Nido, who neither of them are even on the roster right now, so that catching ERA stat's interesting, but he literally isn't even hitting well yet. And the Mets don't lose when he's in the lineup. And there's still an offensive ceiling on Francisco Alvarez for like a perennial, like 35 homer, like 260, 270 hitter guy, like 20, 30, 40% better than league average. He's not even close to that yet. He's barely scraping by as a league average hitter. He got a lot of hits this series, and he finally started to really seem like get his timing down, get around on the ball, but he's not even close to scratching his offensive potential. His OPS isn't even scratching 700. Like, and he has one home run this season and I think 7 extra base hits now. Like it's not even close to the player he's going to be. And just seeing how much of a leader he is when he's basically almost a child still. It's fucking awesome.
He can just barely have a legal drink. He's 22 years old. He's probably getting ID'd still when he goes to the bodega, grab a beer. He's still getting ID'd. Like he completely changed the feel of this team. And again, shout out Mark Vientos. All this guy does is mash. All he does is mash, and he kept doing it in this series. We love Brett Beatty. We love Mark Vientos as well, but he's also been a huge difference maker in this run because now there's actual production coming out of the third base spot.
When he hit that home run on Tuesday, it's 113 miles an hour. Fucking smoke that ball. It was his home run and the Nimmo home run. I thought both of those home runs were like kind of special for the flow of the game because the Vientos home run was like coming after the game the night before. It's like, yeah, like fuck you guys, we still got this shit. And then Nimmo after the big inning was the moment. It's like, okay, like let's try and come back. We can definitely still get back in this game. I don't care that we're down 6-2. Like we can win any game. But those two were big. And I also just want to go back to Alvarez for a second because I think his at bat in the 8th inning was one of the best moments from the Mets season so far. I want to give SNY credit for putting out a highlight today. Usually when we put out highlights in baseball, anyone does it, it's a moment, you see the hit and the ball's in play and the thing happens. But this literal at bat from Alvarez was special. And SNY posted the full 6-pitch at bat. 6-pitch might be 7-pitch at bat. 6-7 pitch at bat that happened in the 8th inning with 2 outs against David Robertson, who's a long-time reliever. He's been around for a million years. We saw last year firsthand how good he can be still in his late 30s out of the bullpen. And we talked about in the offseason, we were really hyping up Alvarez, that he kind of just still has these 2 like problem zones, which is almost every hitter's problem zone in the plate, which is, oh my God, I have a bug. I have a bug right on me.
You have a bug right on you?
It's in here somewhere. I think it's a moth or something. I'll get him.
In the room?
Find a way. I mean, in the room. It's somewhere. There's always going to be bugs around. But problem zones for Alvarez, for most hitters, basically every single hitter in the league, it's going to be up and in, low and away. And it's kind of like up to you to see how much you can lay off those pitches that are outside the zone and wait for the pitcher to make a mistake and just not like kind of get yourself out and not chase pitches that are you think are going to be in those zones, but find their way out of it. And David Robertson was just obsessed with throwing Alvarez low and away, low and away, low and away, low and away.
Yep.
First pitch, low and away. Second pitch, low and away. And then I think it was the third pitch of the at-bat where he nabbed the corner with a fastball, probably an inch outside.
Probably a ball.
Yeah, you look on the illustrator afterwards, it was an inch outside. Alvarez not being pouty, not being bitchy. He goes back to the umpire. He like says, strike, like got the outside corner. Like, was it high, low? And umpire's like, got the corner, whatever. So Alvarez looked, he back nodded, goes, okay. And then he comes back for the next pitch and he moves like an inch and a half, 2 inches close to the plate. And he was like, if I have to cover that part of the strike zone, he's like, I'm just going to do that. And I've seen 4 pitches down there. I really doubt the 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th pitches of the at-bats. Now he's going to start coming into me. So then once he does that, I think he fouls off another one. and then he lets a really nice curveball go by that just misses the zone there. So now it's 3-2. And he's like, he's at that point, I think Alvarez is just guessing dead red. He gets the fastball, gets a little too much plate. He yanks it in the gap, and the Mets tie the game, come all the way back.
I'm laughing because I just saw what you wrote it in as in the notes, and it was Alvarez at bat versus Robertson was sex.
Yeah. I like that now there's like a new segment where I got the bug. Where's
you got the bug?
He got away.
Still alive?
I got him.
Got it. Oh, shown it on camera. All right, for those of you on YouTube, you can see a dead bug if you're interested in that content. That's what you get on the Mets'd Podcast YouTube channel.
Dead bugs. But it was straight sex. Like from a guy who's 22 years old who just didn't play for almost 2 months to come back in against one of the better relievers of our generation. Like, I'm being a little bit hyperbolic there, but
of course, yeah.
From the last 10 years, like how many relievers were actually better than David Robertson? For this long time, I don't know.
Yeah.
How many relievers hang on for 15 years? Almost no one. But it was just amazing. Like he outsmarted someone who's been in the league for almost 20 years, 15 years.
No, it was phenomenal. It was great. And of course, Pete Alonso then gets the big hit. Reed Garrett does his job in the 8th. Edwin Diaz closes the door in the 9th. And the Mets win, which was, I think, a huge game, a huge win. You don't like to say huge wins early in the season, but I think even just from a moral standpoint, I think that's a game that the Mets can look back on and be like, that's when shit changed almost. And I know they lost the next game, so it sounds a little bit weird to say that. But even the way that they lost game 3, I wasn't mad. Does that make sense? Like, giving up the home run to Leody Taveras sucks, and like Drew Smith has a home run problem. There's for sure a home run problem. But like you're going to lose baseball games, and I felt like this was a loss rather than the Mets' like inability to be a Major League Baseball team.
And I think also most of us felt that loss coming for sure on Tuesday. Just the way Grimace memes went ballistic on Monday, and just the way the team got 23 hits and 16 runs. I forget now, whatever it was. You're just like, all right, this is the game you just lose. This is when the law of averages come back. But it did feel like that through 2/3 of the game. Then to come back was like, oh, now we might just never lose again. But losing the game Wednesday kind of sucked just because it felt winnable, but you're not that mad to lose it just based on how often you've been winning and how you've been winning. I think Minaya, again, it's like the same song and dance with him every single time out. Like watching his starts at Pure Groundhog's Day, he did do a lot of different things in this start where he threw higher percentage of colors than he's thrown in any start this year. And that he had that color moving. It had a little more horizontal break than usual, and it kept the same velocity, so it just might have been a little more oomph on that pitch.
Did you catch what he said after the game about the game plan after the first inning? Apparently, he was trying to be too cute and like hitting corners, and they were just like throw the ball down the middle because everything was moving out of the zone and causing balls. And he was like, I feel like I'm throwing a good pitch. So they're like, throw the ball down the middle, and it's gonna move to where you want it to go. And that was kind of the big difference maker.
That's funny because I just pulled up the pitch chart of this game, and if you look at it, his pitches it basically either got tons of plate or were not in the strike zone. So yeah, that was basically it. But a little part of me was really hoping he was going to carry this no-hitter deep, and we were going to just have like no-hitter Grimace rhetoric. Like, the Mets go through a team no-hitter on Wednesday, like that, it would have been fever pitch. Like, that's it.
Oh, it would have been intolerable.
Especially with an off day, it would have been Grimace tattoos like everywhere in the city. Like, I don't even know what else would have been going on for it, but so weird that he had such a bad first inning, loaded the bases, hit a batter to bring home a run, and they kept that no-hitter through the 5th. And then just like clockwork, every single start with Minaya, he just unravels third time through the order. Yep. And we touched on this actually a little bit with Lance coming up later, so not going to divulge on it a lot, but Minaya is just a guy who doesn't, like, it's not like that his stuff isn't good, and it's not that he doesn't have stamina, but it's just that he only knows how to get hitters out like kind of one way.
Yes.
So like as you keep seeing it, concept of pitch decay, which you're going to talk about Lance in a little bit, some like a theory that he's been working on. It's just like how many times you can get hitters out basically the same way, like to know where the pitch is. It's a little bit uncomfortable at first. Second time, you're like, okay, I think I got a hang of this. Third time, you're like, I know exactly what's going to happen, and now I'm going to hit it, and that's what happened.
Yeah, no, I'll say this. He dogged through it though to get 5 2/3.
No, he did.
When he threw, I think he threw 32 pitches in the first inning, which is pretty abhorrent. 26? It's pretty bad. No, it was in the 30s. It was in the 30s. Like, so to get through almost 6 innings, we'll get there, Sean and I. We'll get there. We'll get to 6 innings one day with you.
It's 11 out of 14 starts this year. Minaya has not gone 6 innings.
Yeah. The thing that did concern me a little bit though was Sean Reed Foley. Did you catch his velos?
It seems like he's probably hurt. Sean
Major down.
He was down by 3 miles an hour across the board. Usually sits 95, 96, and he was 91, 93 in this. And he's usually a guy who just peppers fastballs, 60, 70% fastballs and starts. And this one was Even.
I'm pretty sure you were radioing today. Were you a radio guy for
No,
this
I
one?
was on TV today.
Okay. Did you catch Keith and Gary talking about like
Yes.
immediately? They're like, something looks off with him. And then they cut to Hefner, who was talking to the head trainer, and they were talking very intently about what was
Yeah.
going on. So we're like, oh, everybody sees something, but not concerned enough to go check on him. Like this, I'm a little bit confused.
Especially with men on base, and it kept happening. And and he did get out of it. He actually threw some nice changeups where I was like,
Changeups were good, yeah.
like if he actually has that pitch like that, that's a whole new wrinkle for him. Because he also didn't throw a slider in this one, so I was just like, it felt weird. It felt like something's wrong. Vasilica might get the IL stint tomorrow, which also makes it much more annoying that Dedniel Nunez wasn't available. I'm not going to really say anything shitty about Dedniel Nunez because he's been a godsend this month in this bullpen, but a sinus infection, dude? Come on. And I've had some really bad sinus infections. I live with 2 deviated septums. I am not a professional athlete and never will be. I never had an opportunity to be. I never even was close, of course. But just like, I don't know. It has to be a fucking bad sinus infection. And now he's going to get in a plane. It's going to make it a lot worse.
I feel like the last time I had a sinus infection was a couple years ago. And I will say I went like full baby mode. And I was just like, I'm not doing anything for like 3 days. So I don't know. It feels like it could be tough to pitch with it.
It probably definitely is, but like again, Sean Foley might be hurt, so like
yes.
I don't know. But,
yeah, that part sucks.
The worst part about a sinus infection, I get them all the time. They're the worst. But before you really feel it, you blow your nose and you see the green snot.
Really,
the green snot is like that's the thing. Like when you have that green snot, that's the infection.
I feel like I have green snot all the time.
You might just have some infections in there.
Really, I'm infected.
But like it's green. Like there's no miscategorizing the green. It's not like a pale green. It's fucking green.
Next time you do it, let me know.
Yeah, I'll throw you a Snapchat of it. My sister's famous for this because I think she's like scared of sinus infection. So every time she blows her nose, she'll reopen the tissue and just look at it. And I hate it. I scream at her every single time.
Just roasting her out to the podcast people.
Bizarre behavior. I don't care. I'll roast my sister to the podcast people. She knows she deserves it for that one. There was another moment in this game that I didn't notice on TV, but I just saw it on Twitter from like an MLB memer, Calico Joe. It was an at-bat between Alvarez and Langford when I think it was still Minaya struck out Langford. And Alvarez had a nice frame job on a pitch that was out of the zone. Umpire was inconsistent this game to be really nice. Yeah, very inconsistent. The Drew Smith inning and the Sean Foley innings, they could have got out of them if they got some calls that looked like they were where he was calling strikes. But yeah, nevertheless. And Alvarez basically told him like politely, like, hey, at-bat's over. Get out of here.
Do you really?
And then Langford goes, I want to find the exact, because you can see him mouth it. Langford goes, that's a ball, motherfucker.
Oh.
Yeah. So that was
interesting.
It was a little moment there.
I mean, Langford's what, like 4 years older than Alvarez probably? So
I think about 2. But he also said, that's a ball. And he turned his head away from Alvarez and then said, motherfucker.
Oh, real Nick Sirianni move.
Yeah, exactly. Very Nick Sirianni move.
Stock is down on Wyatt Langford, although we did jinx him. He hit his first home run out of the stadium this series.
And I was also wrong. It was a Sean Foley inning. That was an inning where they had men on base and we're still losing. But just a nice little coy moment from two elite youngsters going back and forth.
Yes, very, very talented. Sucks that we couldn't hit Andrew Heaney. I knew that was going to happen, though. I knew we weren't going to touch Andrew Heaney because we never do.
Funnily, he hasn't even been that bad this year, like compared to what he usually is. But basically the same.
Been Sean Manaea? Haven't they been the same pitcher?
Yeah, we've talked about. I think going into the game, it was the same amount of innings, the same amount of strikeouts. It was
same whip, same ERA.
Yeah, same whip, same ERA, all that shit, exactly the same. But yeah, it's funny. It's just this is the first year that everyone's not obsessed with Andrew Heaney, being like, this is the Andrew Heaney breakout year. And now he's like, I have a 4.2 ERA. I'm striking guys out.
Yeah,
like I'm just hanging out. I'm kind of keeping this whole thing afloat. But yeah, I mean, we were so high after Tuesday that this loss didn't feel that bad, even though it was a very winnable game. And Leody Taveras hits a game-winning home run when he was, I'm not kidding this. I think it was, I wrote it down in my Roll the World blurb tonight. I'll tell you the exact number. I believe it was 1 for 53 this month.
I got to say, though, Gary and Keith were unreal negative with Leody Taveras this entire season. Like, it felt like every time they came up, they're like, this guy can't hit for anything. And then when he came up in that inning, they're like, Leody Taveras hitting 210. This guy, oh, man, he hasn't done anything. I was like, please, for the love of God, stop. Drew Smith is in. He gives up nukes.
3 for 53 this month before that home run, Leody Taveras.
Tough.
Whatever. You won a series.
We won a series. Can't really complain about it. Pretty good stuff going on in Mets world. Now, one thing that's not great going on in Mets world, Willie Mays passed away on Tuesday. Keith, that was like his player growing up out in the Bay Area, got really choked up. And even though neither of us got to watch Willie Mays play, I did get that weird that weird feeling that you get when like someone passes away, but you're like not crying. I don't know how to explain it, but it did feel very like somber getting that news, even though he was like a 93-year-old man who hadn't been necessarily doing well.
Yeah, it's just it sucks because he has such a connection to the city of New York. The Mets organization, for one thing, Mets retired his number at Old Timers Day, like an old promise to Joan Payson, how we loved him. But he was so intertwined in New York culture for
Oh
so
yeah,
long, playing all those years in the Giants. I believe winning a championship with the
yeah,
Giants, or at least many pennants with the Giants. His rookie of the year with the Giants. Oh yeah, the catch, that was a championship,
yeah, yeah.
1954. His first MVP with the Giants. He was up in Harlem forever. Him, Monty Irvin, and I have the other name here. Him, Monty Irvin, and Hank Thompson with the Giants were the first all black outfield ever in the
Wow.
history of baseball in Harlem. I also heard another story my dad told me today that after they won the 1954 World Series, you get a bonus for that. And baseball players didn't make a lot of money back then. So Willie Mays and Monty Irvin opened up a liquor store in Harlem called Wilmot, and
Nice.
they ran that liquor store together while the team was still there.
That's so crazy. That's awesome.
It's amazing. But like he was such a beloved figure in baseball history. Like Say Hey Kid, that story I
Oh
read
yeah.
today came from when he first came up, he was like at the same time very shy and very social. So he didn't really want to like talk to reporters very much. So he would always just like they'd ask a question, be like, say hey. And they'd be like, say hey kid, that's him. Just funny. I don't know. Everyone loved him.
Yeah, and just straight up one of the best players, if not the best player to ever play Major League Baseball. 660 home runs, a career OPS at 940. He missed basically a year and a half due to military service too.
Yeah.
So we could have seen 700 plus home runs from this guy. Like he was just on another level in a time too where you got to remember the color barrier had just been broken a few years earlier. So an African American player playing Major League Baseball, dominating it, playing it in a different way than a lot of players were used to, because we talked about this on on MLB Network today. Like Jackie Robinson broke the color barrier, but had to play the game like technically the right way because he was the first. There was a lot of pressure on him, a lot of eyes on him. Willie Mays kind of brought what they said was the Negro League attitude to Major League Baseball, something that they had never really seen, and changed how the game was played. Basket catches over the shoulder, running around the bases, bat flips, like whatever it was. He brought that swag, he brought that energy, changed the game of baseball, and truly is one of the Mount Rushmore of baseball. He's on it.
Totally. I would argue, and I think I've told you this. We've had like these arguments at like rock and roll at 2:00 in the morning.
Yeah.
I think Willie Mays is the greatest player ever because like there's so many mitigating factors that like make me think he's the best. Missing those 2 full years of his prime, his 21, 22-year-old seasons to go fight in the Korean War.
Crazy.
The year he came back, he had 40 home runs, hit 350, won the World Series, and won the MVP award. And he just hadn't played baseball for 2 years. And he did that, and apparently he was playing in military leagues in Korea with the United States Army, he was doing it. And that's where he learned the basket catch, which is really funny.
Oh, that's cool.
That's what he says. And that he was the first guy to usher in this insane era of the 60s and 70s where stolen bases became so damn cool.
Yeah.
And if you track Willie Mays in his prime and when he got really good in the late 50s, New York and San Francisco, and then you think about when, like, just the way that how big of a sport that baseball was in the black communities in baseball in the 60s, 70s, 80s. Black participation in baseball peaked in 1981. So those kids who were coming up in 1981, say they were 24 years old,
Yeah.
they were 7 years old, 17 years before 1960, in the 60s when Willie Mays was crushing, and he was the best player in baseball doing insane things. And also pushing the Willie Mays, the greatest player of all time narrative. He had 660 home runs. He was playing in the Polo Grounds.
Yeah, not an
that
easy
had
place.
500 feet to straightaway center, and Candlestick Park, which is every single game he played was 50 degrees outside. Not fun to hit. Keith was telling a story in the broadcast that Willie was really good at finding the jet stream and like finagled his swing to pull the ball as high up in the air as he could, as much as he could, so it would get up in the wind in San Francisco and like go out that way. He did have some crazy home run seasons when Candlestick Park opened in the early 60s. Yeah, he had 52, he had a 49, he had a 47, 300 career batting average. But to be that close to Babe Ruth in home runs at this time in history while missing 2 years of your prime, and then also to be that close to Hank Aaron home runs when he had 2,000 less plate appearances than him, almost 3,000 less plate appearances, and missing 2 years of his prime and playing in two of the biggest pitcher parks of the era. It's just, while being arguably the greatest defensive player ever and the first real true like power speed threat the league ever saw, there's a lot of arguments, a lot more arguments that he's the best player of all time than a lot of other guys.
Totally. I'm here for it. He's the godfather to the guy I consider the best player of all time, Barry Bonds.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that was his godfather. Him and his dad were really good friends. Like that's crazy in of itself. But rest in peace, Willie Mays, one of the greatest to ever do it. Wish I could have met that guy one time.
I know. I will give me one more minute for stupid Willie Mays shit.
Go for it. Give me
bizarre facts.
go.
Willie Mays started his career 1 for 25
Whoa,
at the plate, and the one hit was a home run off Warren Spahn.
Jesus.
Yeah, and he was so insecure about hitting major league pitching when he came up that he told the Giants general manager he didn't think he was ready.
Whoa.
And they were like, "You don't have a choice. You're coming to the major leagues." And
That's pretty good.
he was playing professional baseball, and he was literally still in high school.
For the Birmingham Black Barons, right?
Yeah, because his dad was a player in the Negro Leagues in the same league, and he knew the coach. And it was like apparently a major point of contention with him in his high school that he was playing professional baseball and traveling with the team. So he would travel with the team for a week and then come back and do a week of school and go back and forth like that.
Funny.
And it took him an extra year to graduate high school because of that. And he got barred from playing high school sports because he was a standout quarterback and basketball player, because of course he was. And they were like, you can't play anymore. And he was like, what the hell? And another super cool fact about Willie Mays, first ever player to make $100,000 playing baseball in a year.
Whoa.
First ever 100K salary.
Shout out Willie Mays.
Changing
the game more than I even knew.
Dude was the man.
Dude was the man. R.I.P. But that is going to be it for the regular part of this episode. We are now going to switch it on over to our Cubs preview with Lance Brozdowski. So hope you guys enjoy.
All right, Mets fans, we have a very special guest this week helping us with the Cubs preview. It's Lance Brozdowski, Lance Broz on Twitter, someone who's been very active on social media. He's great pitching recaps. His YouTube channel is incredible. Someone who Mark and I have known for a while, wanted to have him on. But Lance, really excited you're here joining us.
Thanks for having me, guys. It's going to be fun.
So I think just from hearing another podcast, sliding your DMs sometimes, talking about pitching, you might have one of the most unique jobs in all of baseball media. If you want to just take a minute here and explain to our listeners what your role is and what you do.
Yeah, for sure. My role is very interesting. I'm a player development analyst with Marquee Sports Network, not with the Cubs itself. But my job is essentially I have my own like breakdowns on air for our pregame shows here on our RSN. I do those like 2 to 3 times a week. I'm on air with whoever our talent is in. So like we have Cliff Floyd in today, which lines up well being on a Mets podcast today. He's a great dude, and it's really fun to communicate like analytics with him, and because he listens, like he's super open to considering my nerd perspective and then telling me I'm wrong, which makes it really entertaining television most of the time. So yeah, that's like 2 to 3 times a week. I also do a lot of minor league coverage here. We have like a live show and some other pre-produced 30-minute shows that I contribute to, following a lot of the Cubs prospects. And then a lot of my other job is video editing, like helping out with our pre and post game shows from a video editing perspective. Again, primarily more, advanced stuff, talking to talent, thinking about like what a guy changed in a given start. And then outside of that, I have like my own brand, so to speak. You guys mentioned the YouTube channel. I have a Substack, some other things. I'm just trying to grow and diversify because I think I got way too siloed on Twitter. And as that ship has started to combust, you realize that you gotta move elsewhere. I wish I did it 3 years ago, but you can't. I guess can't really blame myself for that. I just gotta get going and push the other channels. So that's where I'm at.
Yeah, I've been watching your YouTube channel for a while now because James and another friend Bengal were like really hip to your stuff very quickly, and I started watching, and I've learned a lot just from watching your videos. Where exactly did you get all this from? Like we joke, and James is the pitching whisperer on the podcast. We just go for him for pitching stuff. But then I hear you talking, I'm like, oh man, it feels like James doesn't know anything.
It's true. Number one, no chance. Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of cool people that I met over the last couple of years. I did some video editing for Driveline Baseball, which obviously most people know. I was like a remote video editor for them right after the pandemic. I was like stitching together Rapsodo, TrackMan, and Edgertronic footage. So it's like a really nerdy position. But I did it for like a couple months. Like they just needed someone just to help on the video editing side, and I had that background. But that gave me really good exposure to a lot of people who are now in major league orgs, and also just built up rapport with a lot of the guys that are still at Driveline, and also just built some cred from I could read a TrackMan report and a Rapsodo report. So that's just allowed the communication to really flow whenever I talk to coaches. That's been my main thing that I've enjoyed. I remember when I came out of grad school for journalism, which is where I kind of pivoted into this industry. I wanted to be Ken Rosenthal and break news. And man, no offense to agents, I just didn't enjoy talking to agents. I was at the combine the other day and I met 2 really cool agents. I swear I'm not singling them out because I actually think I might stay in touch with them. But anytime I got on those calls, I was just I felt like I was wasting their time because, I wasn't going to ask them what they thought of, low ride four seam trends in baseball. Like I just wanted them to tell me who they were signing, who was signing where. It was very transactional. And then I realized like I was more motivated to talk to the coaches, like pick their brains on larger trends in the league, what they're doing with guys, why they're doing it with guys. And that's, I think, just really fed and bubbled up to a lot of the major league stuff I do. I love looking like every night. I mean, most people have a process for like box score looking, right? Like you guys probably have too. You sit down, it's like, let's just see what happened around the league. I do that every night, but I do it purely on the pitchers that threw, and I just dig through guys, and it's like I just think about what they're doing differently, why they did it, what the matchups are, is it matchup based or is it actual trend, and then I just aggregate all that, and it's great because like when you guys pull me on this pod and I'm like looking at your starters, I'll like go back to my Substack and like just type in the names and see what I wrote, and it's like immediately I'm like clicks. I'm like, oh yeah, cool. Like Meagle not throwing a lot of fastball's getting beat up against lefties. Like I wonder if he drops the usage there. It's like click, got it. So it's like accumulating all that info and then being able to regurgitate. It's really become, I guess, my brand to some extent, which I'm very happy with.
It definitely has become your brand. And like exactly what you just said, I really wanted to ask you. And I wrote down in my very abbreviated notes for this, but you're probably better than anybody in the baseball space right now at getting these niche, granular pitching stats quickly, like in a game. Like a guy will be on the mound and he'll talk about something that's changing. And I really want to know, like, what is your in-game data setup? Like, what are your tabs open? Like, what do you have? Is like, what spreadsheets, what pages, what websites? Or is that all just in your brain? Like,
no chance it's in my brain, man. Come on now. It's this. So there's a site that a lot of teams have contracts with called True Media. That has been a huge asset to me. I mean, they were cool enough. I like hounded them for years because they have live like in-game short form movement, which is just how I digest pitching the best. And a lot of people do in Major League Baseball and player development side as well. And I'm waiting for it. I know it's coming on Savant. I've talked to Petriel about this. They're going to replace, I don't know if they're going to replace the long form stuff you see, but they've gotten a lot of feedback from players who go to Savant are like, I don't understand what, minus 24 inches drop is on my slider. Like I'm used to seeing it as 3 IVB or negative 3 IVB, So like they're going to make that flip eventually. And then I think I'll just probably end up using Savant. But for now, and the last couple of years, like it just hasn't been something that's accessible. So True Media was cool enough to just give me like a comp subscription. And that's my main tool, honestly. I love their heat maps. It's super sortable and intuitive, usage. I can just get it all really quick. So, I mean, that's one of the lone tabs I have up. That MLB, I'll rip Fangraphs. I have a big Excel doc that's Driveline Stuff Plus model, which I really like. They've updated it a bit and played around. There's also like a command metric in there, which helps me because that their command metric factors in intent, which is really cool. So it's not just like, is this pitch in the optimal spot? It's like, is this guy thrown to a location that we think he was trying to hit on this given pitch? So I'd say those are like my main things. Like it's not crazy diverse. And honestly, when I like sit down to watch a game late, like I'll get out late and I'll go home and just throw on like whatever West Coast game's going on.
Yeah.
Most of the time, I'm not even really second screening that experience. Like I'm so, I've been second screening the whole day at work that it's like, that is just like, let me see what the Dodgers are doing. And like, it's usually late game, 5th inning plus. Like I don't need to pull up, Ryan Yarborough's True Media and see what he's doing. Like, it's just, I'm just having fun. I'm just enjoying stuff. So,
I like that you have like the work baseball and then your relaxation baseball. You're like,
yeah,
now I'm on. Yeah.
Separated, man.
It's like West Coast coming to chill out.
Watching Ryan Yarbrough pitch, relaxing.
That's relaxing, yes.
Oh, that's so cool. You have that True Media. I've been trying to weasel my way into one of those for years.
You got to come up with a consumer product because I get asked all the time. It's like, where do you get these plots? And it's like, I don't know how you can get them, honestly. I guess you got to work for a team or like, I'm the guy who runs the company for 4 years. Like,
dude, because it's like that minor league StatCast. I'm just like, oh, there's so much in there. I could do so much of that. I just try and just whittle my way in, but one day.
Yeah, no doubt.
So speaking about pitching and more so with the Cubs here for the series preview, the pitching matchups we got coming up with the Cubs guys, we're going to see Shota. We're going to see Jameson Taillon. We're going to see Javier Assad. Shota, I think we'll talk a little bit more on his own here, but guys like Taillon and Assad, I think Mets fans, when they watch these guys pitch, probably aren't going to be particularly impressed by the stuff, not throwing 99, not having the craziest movement by any means. But yet you look at their numbers and they're both guys who ERAs are hovering right around 3. What has made them so successful this year that is maybe not been the same in the past?
Yeah, Cubs are an interesting team, I think, in terms of what they value at the major league level. And I'm not even really sure if it's what they value. I wonder if it's just a matter of like optimizing what they have, so to speak. They throw a lot of fastballs. I think they're like 4th in baseball in terms of four-seam sinker usage combined as an org. They just throw a lot of fastballs. So like all of their starters are going to hound fastballs. Taillon's a guy that last year when he came over, he started throwing four-seam cutters it in, and then he got crushed in April and May. His stats were terrible. So he just moved everything to the outer third of the plate versus lefties in particular. And then now you're starting to see the league move back against him where they're starting to cover that away, four-seam and cutter. Like he just tries to backdoor everything, and then he'll go like curveball down in. And I wonder whether he's going to kind of move back to those inside locations eventually. If you look at when he was successful as a Yankee, he was much more pitching inside. So I've been monitoring that with him. He's tough versus righties, though, because he's got a good sweeper now since he came to the Cubs. You know, he's run into a lot of variance. It's a weird situation because I feel like this happens with a couple of Cubs guys. Like they have peripherals that aren't as great as their results. And I don't know if they're just really good at game planning or a variety of other things. But, you know, I got to give him credit. Like Assad's a great one. Like we always throw up leaderboards on the broadcast where it's like ERA in the last – was the ERA since like 2021, and it's like Kershaw and like Javier Assad. Like it's one of those like trivia things that you're just never gonna get. Like even I wouldn't get it if you let me guess top 5. I would guess like all the big dogs. I wouldn't guess Javier Assad, but his last couple starts haven't been that good. He's this mold of pitcher that I think we're seeing a little bit more of, where it's a righty who has like a sinker sweeper, throws that a lot to righties, and then when you flip to lefties, it's like 5 pitches, 15% or more. It's like, I don't want to call it like a kitchen sink because he's not throwing everything to either handedness. Like Merrill Kelly's maybe more kitchen sink where it's like I'm throwing 4 or 5 pitches to either handedness a guy. But with Assad, it's like sinker sweeper. And then lefties, it's like I'll throw everything. And then he also splits locations on stuff. So he'll go like cutter in and out, and he'll go like sinker front hip and away. And it's like at that point, you're looking at like almost 6-7 pitches in terms of if you want to look at it from a location perspective, you know? So like he's a really interesting guy in that respect. And I think to some extent that's allowed him to really push and just do a better job on the production standpoint and maybe mitigate some of the risks that eventually he's starting to run into now where guys are starting to cover the inner third sinker. We'll see where he goes from that. I think he's a little regression proof because he has enough to go to outside of the current mix. Like if something's not working, he's got 4 of the pitches he could play around with location and usage on. They do a good job here. I mean, I think they got some smart people on the pitching side, and they just gotten results from guys that I honestly didn't think they'd get results from.
Weirdly, the Cubs seem like they've gone through this organizational change. Like whether it was just like finding market value or just like finding a new way to get through development, where this whole rotation, no one really throws a fastball over 95 miles an hour. You look at Justin Steele, who for years now, even more so than Assad. I know we're not seeing Steele in this series, but he's so crafty with different fastballs and different sliders, and let him, Saad, Tyone, and Shota, we're going to talk about a little bit. They do so much with command more than stuff, which is the way the rest of baseball's gone. Do you think there's anything that's happened in the Cubs organization that's kind of pushed them into this direction, or is this happenstance?
I think it's a little happenstance. I really do think it's like a byproduct of the guys they've had and the contracts that they've signed, and maybe some of their unwillingness to like battle in the top end of dollar free agent markets where those guys might line up a little more. Like they go after a Tyone who's like not one of the top pitching guys of that free agent class, you know. I think that when Breslow came here, was that 2019, 2020? Really big emphasis on velocity and stuff. And it changed a lot in the minor leagues from a stuff perspective. They jumped that up over a 2-3 year period of time. And I really think that helped them overall. And what you've seen now in the minor leagues is that it's a bit different of a mold of pitcher that they're working on, if that makes sense. You know, like Cade Horton, who's currently down with an injury, is more of a stuff guy. They have some other stuff starting pitchers. They don't really have too much starting pitching depth, if I'm being honest. But like Ben Brown is another one, right? Like came over to the David Robertson trade from the Phillies. Like, yeah, like they're starting to build up velocity a little more. It's just taken a bit for that to bubble up to the major league level. I think primarily because they've had success with a variety of other guys that aren't velocity based. But I think if you want to talk bullpen, like it's caused some issues on the bullpen side of things.
Yeah.
Bullpen's been terrible. Bad, like terrible bad. And I don't really know if there's like a savior per se. Tyson Miller traded for like an org level middle infielder that they didn't really have a spot for, Jake Slaughter, to the Mariners. He looks good. He changed his sweeper this offseason. Was talking to him about that, picking up more lift on it as opposed to the Dodgers, who wanted him to have a little more depth. So like that's been a really good pitch. And I think he's the closer going forward. Like Council had some quotes the other day that were like, we're gonna, Neris is gonna contribute to the 27 outs. That to me just feels like a little bit of gamesmanship of like, I'm not gonna tell you who I'm gonna use in the ninth because I don't want you to like be a little prep for it. So like they used Keegan the other night. I think that probably was because Miller was down. But Keegan's an interesting guy, really good breaking balls. He's paternity list right now, I think. So I don't know if we'll see him this weekend or when he's back. But Yeah, he's been another guy where it's like a tweener. They had him starting a little, really good breaking balls there, but like I don't necessarily think he has closer stuff. There's one guy in the minors, which is deep cut, but Hunter Biggie is this guy who throws like 97, 99. He's like one of the few velo arms they have in the upper minors right now that I think could impact right now. He was down with an injury, started late. If you're gonna give me like a hot take on like who's gonna have the most saves for this team down the stretch, I'm gonna go Hunter Biggie because like Council from the Brewers org, man, like watching that team the last couple of years, they just churn. Like it's Abner Uribe, Strzelecki, like out of nowhere, and it's
McGill.
Like if I'm Council,
Jay Cousins.
I'm looking, exactly. Like I'm looking and I'm going, who is that guy in AAA for us right now? And like Hunter Biggie's really the only one. There was this other kid there who they just sent back down to AA because he was having trouble with the zone and maybe the ball that they jump to when you get up to AAA. But I like Hunter Biggie. I think he's exactly like the guy Council would slot immediately into a leverage spot. So keep an eye on him.
Yeah, it's legitimately a name I have never heard of. And based on James' face, I don't think he's heard that one either necessarily. Yeah. So for those fantasy baseball people out there, maybe some deep leagues, keep an eye out for that. But yeah, the bullpen's been rough. The starting pitching has been really good, especially with Shohei Imanaga, or as we now know, Mike Imanaga II, which is just one of the best stories going on in baseball. He's such an interesting pitcher, and we talked a lot about him this offseason. Obviously, there was a lot of ties to the Mets. And what played for Shota was that fastball, and that fastball has been great this year, along with the split finger. Another guy that you watch too, and you're like, how does he keep getting it done? How is he so dominant? Maybe you can explain to the Mets fans.
Yeah, I think it has to do with two things. I think the main thing with it, and our broadcast mentions this a good amount, and I think some others do as well. But his release height's really low. It's like 5'2", 5'4" off the top of my head. I'm not exactly sure, but it's below average release, and it's a lot of vertical from the below average release. He's a shorter guy and he extends that amount at a reasonable distance, right around his height. I think that just flattens everything out in terms of the approach at the zone. Again, we're talking about like a low slot ride and that being a really popular trend. This was like the low slot lefty ride is kind of rare. You just don't really see it a lot. Like Josh Hader is probably the best example, but like Josh Hader's arms hiked up over the last couple of years to the point now where he's like not even a low slot guy to me anymore. He's pretty over the top. I mean, his fastballs are up to like 20 vertical now, which like is crazy because he used to be down around like 16 and it used to be super flat. But yeah, I mean, it's just a low slot and it rides and he throws it up well and he's got decent command because he doesn't really throw too hard. It's just such a weird look. Like there's the comps I remember like preseason when they signed him and I was like thinking of them were like Nestor Cortez and Alex Vesia, and it's just like I don't even know whether Cortez is a fair comp because he's more of a mixed guy and like Vesia is a reliever. Yeah. Throws harder. It's just like Pete Armstrong had a quote where it was like, it just looks like it's coming from his hip when he faced him early in the year or in spring training. And it's like, that's fair. Like, it's not actually coming from his hip, but like, if you think of his height and release height relative to other pitchers who are lefties throwing any kind of ride, it's like, it's just not that low. So it's lower than you expect. But he is a two-pitch guy, basically. Like, they really reduced his repertoire down and heavily relied on four-seam split. He had some homer problems in MPB. He hasn't run into those yet. I'm kind of almost waiting for some games where he does. And looking at that matchup in particular, Mets are a really good team versus left-handed pitching from what I was looking at quickly. I think they have like one of the highest xWOBAs in baseball, like right next to the Dodgers. So it might be a little more of a test, especially if it's not like a wind-blown in day at Wrigley. I'm really curious to see kind of where he trends. He had a little bit of a rough 2-3 start stretch after they skipped him for an outing because his workload's a little bit up relative to what he did in MPB. So we'll see kind of where things go with him. I'm kind of fascinated to see. He's really good. I think he's a really good pitcher. I don't think he's a sub-2 ERA pitcher. I don't think anyone does. He's probably more like a 3.5, 3.7 guy, which is still really above average, which everyone might be like, whoa, no way, he's got like a 2.2 right now. It's like, there's no pitcher in baseball who's a 2.2 ERA pitcher. Like, let's chill for a sec, So we'll see. But I think he's a great pitcher. He's really fun to cover too from a personality standpoint.
Yeah, he seems great. And even as a 3.5, 3.7 pitcher, if what you guys are paying for him, the way he's transformed the rotation, basically the entire team right now. Like the Cubs are similar to where the Mets were before a one famous McDonald's figure entered the fold, like kind of trying to hang into the wild card picture. But without him, I don't even know where they'd wind up. It's just that.
What's the vibe on this Grimace stuff? You guys are coming here this weekend, so I gotta.
It's high.
It's hilarious, right?
People are like obsessed with him. If you're on Twitter and you're a Mets fan, you're not posting about Grimace, you're just missing out on the most free likes of all time. Like you could literally just post a picture of his face and it's gonna get 1,000 likes. That's amazing. It's taking Mets fans by storm.
It's also insane that this is the second time in like 4 or 5 years now that Grimace has become, for some reason, this like absolutely hyper-focused social media figure. Because years ago, there was the TikTok trend with the Grimace shakes where like he had to take a sip of a Grimace shake and then wind up like in a basketball hoop or like laying down the street. And then it's just like, what's happening to the Grimace shake? So I'm thinking that we know how deep the Mets get into marketing. So we know it's definitely going to be something that happens with Shake, with McDonald's. Something's going to keep happening. But right now, it's great to hang on to something. And the Mets have a long history of bizarre things adding either good luck or bad luck. They had the Black Cat back. I think that was 73 that propelled them to the playoffs. The Mets had, weirdly, a rally dildo. And what was that, I think 2016?
Yeah. Yep.
Someone snapped in the locker room one night. They had the parakeet with Yoenis Cespedes, where a rogue parakeet just showed up on the baseball field in the game where the Mets run really started in 2015. So we've done things like this before.
It's unbelievable.
We're just happy to do it again. But I was going to ask another question about Imanaga, but I totally lost it because you're asking about Grimace.
I mean, come on, Grimace over Imanaga.
I was gonna ask, I was gonna ask you one more about him because it made me think of my favorite your YouTube video you've ever done, where you talked about the pitch decay with Paul Skeens and Shohei Otani.
That was awesome.
But I remember the at bat early in the season. I think it might have been Imanaga's second start against the Dodgers, like a cold day at Wrigley, where he faced Shohei Otani. He was down 3-1 against Otani. I think it was maybe his second at bat, and there might have been a man or two on base. And I cut the video for Twitter one time because I was just like so obsessed with this, where he threw him back-to-back fastballs up and in, which is a place that Otani, I'm not going to ever say that's a place where Otani struggles. I don't think he struggles with any part of the zone, but that's definitely the place where he seems to be the most susceptible. And you see two pitches go by Shohei Otani at 92 miles an hour. And you're talking about the low slot in the ride, but I know it's not enough pitches to get to the pitch scale like you talked about in that video. How are you able to throw two 92-mile-an-hour pitches ever by a guy like Shohei Otani? Like, legitimately.
Yeah, I mean, that might have just been – it's the K stuff's really fun because, like, there was a guy – the more I've thought about that video and talked to people about it who are, like, trying to model it out, the more I, like, kind of see instances of it. Like, this is so random, but the Cardinal series over the weekend, there was, like, a 93-mile-per-hour fastball thrown by Andrew Kittredge. I think it's the old, like, what do you call it? The old Rays reliever, right? Now he's at the Cardinals. And, like, it was an account where I was, like, totally convinced he was going slider away. Like, I think he threw, like, two fastballs to get to a two-strike count, and I was like, slider. And then he goes, like, four-seam middle, and he's like, hit it. And the guy swung right through it. And I was like that. There's a lot of, like, game theory, I think, that goes on in it, where I wonder if Otani just knew that Shota backs off four-seam late in count. And it's like he's just like coin flip two times. I'm pretty confident he's going to go split here or maybe sweeper away because he does that against lefties a bit. And it's like he didn't. He just went fastball. And that gets into like the nuance, I think, of like pitcher-hitter matchups that I love thinking about because I don't know if there's a right answer. But I do think like I don't want to say the analytics limit it, but a lot of the time, and I'm thinking to make a video on this, but like I kind of have a hot take that if you're a starting pitcher, you shouldn't throw your best pitch most often. You should like find a floor for it and like stay at that floor ceiling. Or I don't know. I got to figure out how to phrase it. It's a work in progress, as you can tell. But you hear it a lot. You hear from really smart people. But I think to some extent that idea has like hurt the starting pitcher because of this concept of pitch decay, where it's like if I'm trying to think of a pitcher like Justin Steele is a good example, 2-pitch guy, right? If I'm Justin Steele and I'm throwing my slider a ton, like I'm 50% usage on that first and second time through. Like as you get to the third time through, that guy's seen it probably 4 to 7 times already. I'm not totally confident that pitch is going to be as successful overall. So you like get into this balance of like, I don't know if the best thing for me to do as a pitcher is to actually throw this pitch as much as possible. As a reliever, it's completely a separate story. Yeah. And I think that's where we're getting caught up is like the relievers should do that because you're not turning over lineups. You're not seeing a guy multiple times. And that decay doesn't kick in quick enough such that if you're throwing 4 Edwin Diaz sliders in a row, it matters, especially when the pitch quality is so good. So I just wonder whether like the logic around that doesn't apply at all, in my opinion, to starting pitching. Where like the guys that I think are really good starting pitchers have usually multiple quality pitches and can like push off this decay on any individual pitch by throwing 3 in a given outing. Like Zach Wheeler's a good example. Like that's multiple fastballs, couple different variations of breaking balls, split now too. And it's like I'm not totally convinced that like the 4-seam sweep righty or sink sweep righty is like gonna be that great of a starting pitcher. But well, it's a work in progress. You see, I'm like thinking through the idea as I talk through it. But yeah, I mean, going back to answer your question again, I just think even if I'm saying that, there's situations where like you can be confident enough to counter with a pretty risky pitch. Like you can't throw Otani fastballs most of the time. Like if Shota does that every time he faces Otani's going to bridge him more than not,
Yeah, of
you know. But like just in that instance, based on the parameters and what he threw, like it worked. And I think that's like a lost part of pitching is that pitcher hitter interaction. I think we're losing a bit of it as we get away from starting pitching. And it's why I want the league to like really incentivize starting pitching again, because I think that stuff's just so fun to think about.
I think that's also like one of the great parts of like your content. I think you and Nick Pollock do this so well, where
Pollock's man.
So much data that's become public in recent years. We've seen just, and like, I'm a symptom of this. We're all symptoms of this, where it's just like, you see stuff plus, you see pitches. You're like, okay, you could throw this pitch, throw that pitch. Yeah, make you better. But then you're kind of missing what's actually going on a baseball field. And you're kind of missing where's the line between there's a pitcher who pitches and like a starting pitcher who's like actually really good. We talk a lot about Sean Manaea in this show, who it always feels like he's like one or two tools away from actually becoming like the pitcher he can be. But that's even a skill in and of itself. I mean, like, you've been in the major leagues for 5 years, you can't learn new pitches. Like maybe that's just something you don't have. Like you see Paul Skeens develop this splinter over the last 6 weeks, and now he is probably one of the best pitchers in the league. But then Manaea, who his two-seamer is one of the best run values in the league, he throws a 65, 70% of the time. So once he gets to the fifth inning, which he can never seem to get to, it's kind of all over. But I'm using this now to segue into some Mets pitching here, because we got you here. We might as well ask you.
Yeah.
What do you see of this Mets rotation right now? Because we've seen Tyler McGill come up and be better than he ever has been. We've seen Christian Scott go back down. He's going to be someone that comes up here and probably is skill-wise, talent-wise, maybe the best starting pitcher in the entire organization. But between Manaea, Severino, David Peterson, if you know anything about Jose Budo, happy to hear anything. But is there a
no
glimmer
Quintana
of
love?
I mean, we know what Quintana is. Former club, I guess,
geez.
yeah. But I'm not going to try and make Lance pretend to find anything positive about Jose Quintana.
I didn't look at Quintana before the podcast.
Yeah, no reason.
Exactly. See? Yeah, pitching mind. But is there a glimmer of hope as this Mets team puts himself back into the playoff race for these mid-rotation starting pitchers to find any more success maybe than they found recently?
Yeah, I think so. And I think it's a byproduct of me being somewhat confident in what they're doing in the minor league side as well. I just had a video on the YouTube come out recently that looked at like high level pitching topics in the minors, and it's testy because it's like I'm really aggregating things into one number. I'm looking at like Class A all the way up to AAA and being like, give me one number as to your organization's velocity. So the margins are small between, you know, the variation in an average team's four-seam fastball, but I like the Mets. Like, I think they hired a bunch of smart people. Eric Yeager's there is like a guy that I met this recent offseason and had known about for a while and been meaning to connect with. And he's a guy that's a get for that org. There's some other really smart people too in that organization. And like just talking to Yeager's occasionally about like how they approach things is, I mean, I just think they're on the right path. You saw that with Scott and some of the tweaks that they made this offseason to jump him another level. I really like him as a prospect. Tyler Megill in that split, like I'm a huge split guy. I love splitters overall. Like, I just think there's so many instances I feel like we've run into this year where it's like, why is this guy better? It's like, oh, he's throwing a split more and it's nasty and no one can hit it. It's like the performance against splits hasn't gotten better. There's so few bad splitters. We really have a good understanding on the pitching side of like orientations that get you to certain movement. Like the days of a guy not being able to develop a changeup, I feel like are dying. I feel like I haven't heard that in a while. Like guys have to work on their changeups, but like I'm pretty confident if you put a pitcher that needs a changeup or something that breaks vertically down in a good org, like he'll just come up with something. Combine broadcast Trey Savage, who's an ECU guy, is going to go in the middle of the first round of the draft. And like he added a split this offseason. He's high slot. And it's like, that dude's filthy. Like he's filthy and he's a first rounder because of the split. Like if he didn't add that split, like I don't think he'd be a top 15 pick, you know? So it's like I really like that with Tyler Megill to get back to him. You know, looking at him specifically, I'm curious to see, he's a good example of like, there's certain guys who like have to throw their four seam. Like, I get that the league is pushing against the usage of the pitch, and we're going to see that, I think, continue to downtick. But you have to have something you can strike, or you're just not a starter. He's one of in those weird situations where, like, he doesn't really have anything else to strike a ton to lefties. And I think as a result of that, he's throwing that fastball like 45%. And in an ideal world, you run into him with, like, I don't want to comp him to Logan Gilbert, but there's some similarities there where it's like Logan Gilbert, like, look at his fastball usage over the years. Like that thing's at like 20% now. Yeah. And the reason he got it down to 20% is because he started throwing this weird cutter that he could strike. So you replace a pitch that you can strike that you don't like with a pitch that's marginally better or more unique, I guess, that you can strike. And now you have two pitches you could strike. And I think to some extent adding that cutter for Gilbert helped the four seam. I wonder whether there's something similar in there for Tyler where it's like, okay, we have to throw the four seam 45% because you're not going to get ahead. You're just going to walk all these guys. But it's like, give me. I don't know if there's something else in there. I guess you can ask Jaegers about it. So you're getting him on the pot. Like, what are you going to do? Because I get you can't give him 2 brand new pitches in an offseason, but it feels like there's an evolution of him to come where it's like he dominates righties. Maybe there's something more to lefties, and next thing you know, he's like a mid-rotation starting. Looks good. I'm a huge fan of him, though. I really like him.
Love to hear that because our joke with Tyler McGill is that he is the like ex-girlfriend. Like we see him pitch well, we completely buy back in, and then he has a bad start. We're like, nah, he's the same Tyler McGill.
That's
so it's
so
like
funny.
it's nice to hear someone who doesn't have that like predetermined notion or bias of Tyler McGill.
There.
Being like, no, I like him. He's good.
He's good. I think he's a good pitcher.
And that color you talk about, that is something that he has been coming up with the split to be the pitches against lefties. It's still overwhelmingly fastball against lefties, but it's those colors in the splitter, especially the last, I think it was 2 starts ago, the one against the Nationals. I think he had 8 swings and misses. I believe 6 of them came against lefties. Already? I didn't know. He has a color. He's been throwing a color. His color is more. I feel like there needs to be more of a distinction with color sometimes.
Is it like a slider cutter? Is it just slider?
Like is it a baby slider or is it a different fastball? And his is more baby fastball-ish, but he's just not consistent enough with it yet to do it because he has the slider, which is tight. He has a sweeper, which is wide. He doesn't throw it very often. And then the cutter falls weirdly in between kind of the gyro and the fastball. But I think it's just he's not that consistent with it yet. So it has a lot of variation. So it's hard to actually place it because you watch start to start, like that one backed up. That one moved with his arm. Like, I don't know what's going on here, but it is nice to see him have weapons. And it's also nice for you to positively reaffirm that he is doing something better and different now for us.
Yeah. For sure.
All right, now just to talk about the minor leagues real quick, because again, pitching stuff, Mets minor leagues. You talked about Jaegers. Are you hip to the Mets pitchers that we got going on down there? A little Sproat, a little Jonah Tong action, Nolan McLean.
Yeah. So I'm doing like a top 40 pitching prospect rank that I'm starting to dig through, and I've looked at a couple of those names. I was actually talking to another prospect ranker too about a couple of Mets guys, but the Jonah Tong hype's interesting to me. I saw someone online say that he's like a top 3 pitching prospect in baseball, and I was like, please stop. Like, no, there's no fucking chance. Or excuse me, that's more there, but cut that out. There's no chance there. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, I think he's interesting. He seems like a very cerebral guy, which might be like that makeup element that I like a little more, where it's like, okay, like I'm confident this guy's probably going to explore different pitch types and shapes to figure out his mix and stuff. So I like him. I don't think I like Sparat. You know, I think all those guys are like in this area that you'd say they're almost like league average. Like you give like a 50 is like a major league average starter of some kind. It's probably like a 4 for 5, and you have some upside in it. The thing that I hope you can get to in a lot of these guys is, again, like improving them when they get to the major league level. This is what good organizations do, is like you get these guys that you look at and are like 45 pluses, where they're like not a 50 yet, but they're just around there. They have some element that if this tweaks will push them to that grade, which is good. You know, there's not in the minor leagues at any given time, minors and majors among prospects, there's probably like 30 of these guys, 25 to 30 of them in total. So the fact that the Mets, I think, have a few of them, and Spratt and some others, is interesting to me. And again, like I maybe get a little anecdotal, but I buy into certain orgs that I think have smart people there to make decisions. And the Jaegers is one of them, and some of the other guys they have are sharp. So I like Tong. It's low slot. It's like he's a shorter guy, low release, big carry, so it like pops and models. I will say though, like I thought, another video topic here I'm playing around with, the Orioles are a team that when I did this minor league stuff stood out to me because they have the second highest average release in minor league baseball, and also like the highest vertical break. I wonder whether we're going to get this weird turn back in the league where we start getting like super steep approach 4 seams at the top of the zone all of a sudden. Because like everyone's covering up with flat, and then it's like, give me like a Tyler Wellesley, Verlander steep approach 4 seam. That's like hard with some carry. Models aren't going to love it, you know, overall, because it's not that flat approach fun. But, you know, I wonder whether like some of the guys that prospectors are getting excited about, and these low stock carry guys, are just like, that is the trick's just kind of going to be up to some extent when those guys get to the majors, because everyone on the hitting side understands you have to hit that. Like Travis Bazzano is going to be one of the top picks in this coming draft. Like he's talked a lot about how he like re-engineered his swing to cover 4 seam up and got really good. And it's like, yeah, you're not gonna be able to get up 4 seam by that guy. So like, good luck. Like you got to come up with something else, man. So I wonder, like, I think the Orioles might be onto something there. I don't know. It's a topic that I've kicked around in my head, and I don't mean to bring up Savage again, but he's a guy who's like, he's got like a 6'8" release, like he's near 7 feet, and I think that plays into some extent of his approach and weirdness. So we'll see on Tong, but I like Sparat. Scott's the guy there for sure. that I think mid rotation are better in terms of a starter. And then we'll see how the other guys develop. But I'll probably sneak on a prospect or two onto that top 40 of your guys' org.
Nice.
That's funny because right before you came on, Mark and I were talking about Colin McDaniel just came out with his mock draft. I think he mocked, what's his name? Savage?
Trey
Savage. Yeah.
He mocked him to the Mets, and Mark was like, yeah, I like that. He throws 98 miles an hour with the splitter.
No, we got Brody Brecht. Savage went to the Mariners.
Brecht I like too. Brecht's fun. Yeah. Brecht would be dope if you guys get him. He's like, Iowa turned over their pitching coach. I've heard a lot of weird things about that org not org, but like the school,
University,
I guess, in the pitching side. They had like a couple guys that graduated to major league staffs, and the most recent coach they had in there, I guess, didn't really do the best job from what I've heard. I don't know him, but Brecht is a guy who like he's split, interesting traits. It's I think it's 4-seam split slider, and like he regressed. But if I'm an org and I'm looking at him, like I don't know, that feels like you just undo what was done, and he's back to being a top 10 pick, and you've got value. So the college pitching isn't super strong from a depth perspective in this draft. You get like Burns and Hagen Smith off the top, and then it's like, or Hagen Smith, excuse me, and then it falls a little bit. Like the Savage is the tier below those guys. I love him. And then like maybe it's Brecht is the fourth college pitcher taken. There's a couple other guys, but because that crop isn't super strong, it's not deep. I wonder whether you get like a Brecht jump up, or if the Mets want to build pitching depth in that respect. Like, yeah, I could see like a Brecht or a Savage if he falls going to you guys. I don't know what you guys pick. Is it like
19?
Like 20?
19,
or you're
yeah.
19. Okay.
Yeah.
So I doubt Savage gets past 15, 16.
No.
So maybe Brecht's the option then. So we'll see.
Yeah, we got killed because our pick dropped 10 spots for the luxury tax.
There you go.
threshold.
There you go.
Which is fun. That's a fun faction. You mentioned Justin Verlander. That's exactly why that happened. But,
yeah, that's ironic. Wow.
We gotta let you go in a second. I know we could probably talk all day, but I love that you talked about that like steep release point, heavy 4-seamer at the top of the zone, because that's something that Mark and I have tried. I've talked to Matt Eddy about this, a friend of mine that does data for the Blue Jays, Alex Eisert, about like quantifying this concept of a heavy fastball. And I think that's it. And it's something that was like an old school thing in baseball, something that another Mets prospect, Blade Tidwell, does a lot. He tries to throw
yeah.
He's a big guy. He extends. He has a very steep arm angle, and he does sit that fastball top of zone. But it's just cool that how many different ways there are, like how many adjustments go in year to year. Like this year compared to years past, I think there's like a 5 percentage point increase in sinker usage in baseball.
Yeah,
if you told someone that 5 years ago, they would have been like, you're crazy. Sinkers are out. Everything's a high 4-seam. Get the carry, get the ride, do that. But now it's like, okay, now I actually need that again. And like Robert Orr had a cool piece about pitchers who have different kinds of fastballs.
It's a good piece.
The Cubs do that really well. And
I
don't know, maybe that's the way we wrap this up and get back into it. But just give us one maybe sleeper prospect you think in this MLB draft, or that you just saw from the combine. Anything sneaky to send the people out.
Yeah, I'll go super deep cut here. Presbyterian College in South Carolina is this kid named Daniel Egan. I saw him in the data, and he stood out because he's like probably a 3rd to 6th rounder. Big South, not a great conference. I don't want to knock him for that though, because he's shoved there. But he's got interesting breaking ball traits where it's like 2 good breaking balls at velo. He's throwing like curveball 81 plus, and then he's got a slider that's 84. And he used the curveball a ton and dominated with it. It's just like one of those obvious situations where I think an org gets him and throws the slider harder and throws it more. Like, I think he's a pretty platoon neutral guy because the 4-seam looks good. He's, again, a little bit higher release, but he carries the ball well, sits top of the zone. I wouldn't say it's steep approach, but playing around with those ideas, again, I mean, he's a deeper cut guy, but he was one of the best arms I thought at the combines. Polished dude. He might be like he might be boring, but if Mets happen to take him or Cubs happen to take him in like the 5th round, I think it's a great pick because he's probably some kind of upper level minors pitcher, if not major league pitcher. So
love hearing a dude from the Big South Presbyterian.
Big South, right?
They don't get a lot of shine.
The funny part is like this is my first year really digging into draft stuff earlier because I'm doing this combine stuff and I'm going to be on MLB Network draft broadcasts and stuff.
Hell yeah.
And
nice. Congrats.
I'm hyped for that. It's going to be fun. And
it's sick.
I can't name another team, I think, in the Big South. Please don't tell anybody.
Winthrop.
There you go. See,
Yeah.
I knew Presbyterian College, but I was like, I don't know anywhere else in the Big South.
Charlotte?
No Daniel Egan.
The Charlotte Knights?
I don't think that. I don't know if they're Big South. I don't think they're Big South.
Mets took Wyatt Hugh the poll, from there last year, and we liked him a lot.
Anyways, I got to learn conferences is the main thing. I'm learning the players because that's like my task. But like Callis, Jim Callis from Rugby Pipeline is like the guy who like is the encyclopedia. So like I don't want to waste that brain space. Is my excuse right now. It's Jim. Jim knows.
It's a lot. It's a lot to keep in that head for sure. Lance, thank you so much for coming on. We really appreciate you. Let everybody know at home where they can find you and what else you're up to.
Yeah, definitely pushing Substack in YouTube this year. So Lance BROZ, it's Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. I'm kind of everywhere. I don't do a ton of short form content, but I try. Really pushing YouTube though. Really fun thoughts on there. I try to make it as accessible as possible. The Substack is very niche. if you really want to like nerd out, if you enjoy the YouTube, you'll enjoy that. But
Substack,
might be
sick.
over some people's heads. So I'd say go to YouTube first. Check me out.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on, man. And we'll chat again soon.
Will do. Awesome. Thanks for having me, guys.
Thanks, Lance.
I mean, that conversation with Lance was awesome. I hope
So
you guys go show him some support on all the stuff that he does. I think we'll find ways to get him back on here because if you guys didn't tell, we could probably talk about baseball for 2 or 3 hours with him. And I think that would be fun and maybe something you guys want to see. So you can let us know in the comment section or tweet at us if you just want us to talk baseball with Lance for multiple hours in a podcast one day. We'll find a way to do it. But of course, we're at the end here, so we do have to give some shout outs to the people who have left some reviews. Ben Steinberg, you said we missed you, so I'm gonna read it out for you. I think we already read this one. Maybe you missed the episode, but gave us 5 stars. This is the only podcast of any kind I've ever bothered to watch. Started watching a few weeks into the 2021 season, but made sure to catch up and have watched every episode. So technically a listener since episode 1. Love that. Also watched Draft Nick Mark since 2019. James is great. Glad I learned of him through the podcast. He's great at answering Twitter DMs. Take notes. Big shot, Mark. Mark's bravado and occasional pot stirring complements James' meticulous knowledge and low key sass. They're realistic, funny, modern thinking, fun to listen after wins, comforting after losses. Always quality conversations. And then he gave so much more. I can't read it, but we really do appreciate it. It is a huge paragraph. But thank you so much, Ben, for that. And then we've also got 2 more here. One from Dolgaruki 77, 5 stars, best pod out there. Appreciate you, Dolgaruki. Beginning with the curtain music is just an enjoyable hour of smart baseball talk. I'm an overseas fan from Venezuela, and it's from the internationalization of Major League Baseball TV that I can experience the feel of the season as a local with Gary, Keith, and Ron. A show like this enriches the experience. These guys are fun, knowledgeable, passionate, and truth to their opinion. Even disagree a lot among them, which is great. They're also real New Yorkers, and you can feel the city and team vibe in the show. One question for the boys. What in the world is going on with Marte? All the reads, jumps, routes on fly balls have been horrible. He's not slow and has a lot of experience. Even with the age decline, shouldn't be this bad. Would it be better in left field? Maybe the angles in right field are too foreign for him or the real estate's too big. I understand the arm is special, but it's costing us. All in all, would he be better in left? And my answer is going to be probably not.
Yeah, I don't think so at all. I think I don't know. I just hope he wants to play baseball more as these months go on.
Yeah, or we trade him to a stupid team. That would be cool too. And then the final review, shout out here, BRZowski, 5 stars, best New York Mets pod easily. The boys mentioned today there were no new reviews, so I figured I'd write one. Hands down the best analysis, specifically pitching. Shout out James. Though overall, these guys know their stuff. The perfect mix of excitement. Oh, I clicked off of it. Whoops. The perfect mix of excitement for baseball coupled with the cold hand of reality us Mets fans are way too familiar with. 2024 may not be our year. It's definitely not, regardless of this latest Grimace streak. But I firmly believe the team's headed in the right direction. I look forward to hearing these guys break down what should be a pretty interesting future. Appreciate you, B-Rod. Appreciate all you guys who dropped us the reviews. We have 250 ratings, which is awesome. I know we
have almost 600 on Spotify too. So
yeah, you guys do an amazing job of supporting the podcast. We really do appreciate it. Any final remarks here, James, before we sign off?
I mean, nothing. Just this team is legitimately back in the wild card race. We have 8 games coming up against the Cubs, Yankees, and Astros. I feel like it can tell us a lot as before we get into a really nice lull going into the All-Star break. Just I caution Mets fans not to think too much into the future over the next 2 weeks. Let's just play some baseball, enjoy it. I think we're going to be going around the park next week, Yankees and Astros series, possibly asking you guys for some input, for some videos, possibly just hanging out, maybe gonna have a beer with anyone who wants to have it in the stadium. So hit us up, DM us if you want to meet us, grab a sticker, but let's just enjoy some baseball for a few weeks now.
Day by day. That's how we got to think about it. Thank you guys so much for listening and watching this episode of the Mets'd podcast. Make sure to follow us on all our social media at Mets'd on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Subscribe to the Mets'd podcast YouTube channel so you can see what we look like if you have not yet done so. And if you are listening to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, whatever it is, drop us a rating, drop us a review, download, and subscribe. Follow James on Twitter at
James_Shiano.
And I'm Giraffe Neck Mark with a C. Thank you guys for listening and watching, and we will catch you after the Cubs series. Peace out.
Peace out. See you guys next time.